Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Alright, sure, I don't have anything better to do. Most of these stories are from my grandpa and my dad's side of the family. My grandpa again, several years back. Had another pair of Great Pyrenees. My grandpa loved the breed, thought they were beautiful. These two were brothers, Maxime and Ulysses, both appropriately huge for their names. One day Grandma comes home from errands, asks Grandpa if any of the dogs got loose. He says no, asks why. Grandma says that one of their neighbors stopped her on the way home, told her he thought he saw one of their dogs wandering around. Not the case, Grandpa had kept an eye on them all day, figures it may have been a wild dog with snow on it or something. Doesn't think much of it. Fast forward like a day or so. Snowstorm, lots of wind and snow, not violent, still plenty of visibility. Enough to freak the dogs out though, and they hesitate to go outside to do their business. Grandpa and Grandma are getting things together in case power goes out. Grandpa takes note of everything. Wait, where's Ulysses? You'd think it would be hard for a gigantic polar bear dog to go missing, but he is. Grandma and Grandpa look all over the house for him. Grandma thinks maybe he got out. Grandpa doesn't think so, but goes out to check anyways. When he goes out, he checks the tree line behind the house, since the dogs had run off there before they were properly trained. To his surprise, he sees some big furry white dog moving in the tree line. Calls out to Ulysses, but the dog doesn't come. Keeps calling, eventually it stops, and seems to turn around. Grandpa breathes a sigh of relief as a big white dog comes from the tree line. Wait, that dog is really big. Ulysses was big, he could comfortably rest his front legs on some people's shoulders, but my grandpa says that this dog was absolutely enormous, the size of a cow or something. It wasn't a wolf, it had a dog face, with floppy jowls and ears, and a broader snout and rounder face. Like pig related. It turns its head to look at my grandpa, and its eyes are glowing. Not like comically evil red eyes glowing, just sort of bright spots where its eyes were. My grandpa described it as like when you take a photo of your dog with flash, and its eyes are glowing. Sometimes he says he thinks it had blood around its mouth, but he didn't stick around long enough to find out. Since my grandpa is a smart man, he hauls ass back to his house the second he sees it as maglights for eyes. Apparently Grandma found Ulysses, who heard Grandpa calling his name. He was hiding under the bed because despite being the size of a car, he's a coward. After that, Grandpa pretty much never let the dogs out of his sight for the good half of a year, but never saw the giant dog again. Nothing particularly weird happened that he would relate to it, either.
Be me working at tourist trap on a nearby mountain with girlfriend. Girlfriend buys crystals from nearby gift shop. Ask her if she purified at nearby creek. She replies. We get home and she puts them in hutch inside our living room down the hall from our room, far out of eyesight from our room and bed. We fall asleep. In my sleep I see the hutch opening from the inside in my dreams. Out of it crawl shadow people, pouring from the hutch, filling my living room and rushing in waves down the hall to my room until they are stopped dead at my bedroom door. Wake up in terror looking at the door to see it crowded with black silhouettes with black glowing eyes. Frozen in fear, I simply stare till the fear strangles me to sleep. This goes on every night for a few nights. After all that I get fed up. Same thing happens and I shoot up from sleep and say to them, Jesus Christ, protect me with your light. I see my front door fly open, impossible to see physically from my bed, a powerful blinding light floods my home. All of the shadow people get ripped from my home, clawing to walls to no avail. The door slams shut and I fall asleep like a baby angel sent from heaven with the sole purpose to sleep and rest. Never happens again. TLDR. Don't play with crystals if you don't know how to purify them. And trust the light of Christ to provide protection.
First warehouse job. I'm young. Designated the warehouse drudge by older co-workers. Every mistake gets blamed on me. I do all the grunt work, constantly getting grabbed and slapped. A year later, still the warehouse drudge, and harassment is worse than ever. Start dreaming of FPSing my co-workers, impaling them with the forklift, or running them over with one of the box trucks in the parking lot. Start daydreaming about it too, just wide awake, brooding. Didn't realize how serious it's gotten to this. Find out one day that the warehouse cameras don't work in a particular area of the warehouse, near the carpentry section. I'm in the forklift soon after that. See one of the guys I hate most? Vittel? He's working carpentry. Oh shit, is this it? I start the forklift without even thinking. Double check to make sure no one else is around. Accelerate, zoom, crack, bam, rumble, oh shit. I stop the forklift. 15 feet away, Vittel, my enemy, is lying buried and likely broken under a ton of wooden planks and steel rods. Entire warehouse rushes over. I tell them what I saw. Find out some dumbass had rigged up a Deathtrap shelf in the back of the carpentry area using a piece of rope, boxes, some steel beams, and packing film. The Deathtrap shelf was loaded with spare parts, wood and steel poles mainly, and the rope snapped, which sent the spare parts tumbling down. Knocked over another shelf in the process. That shelf had a huge stack of heavy planks on it. Vittel noticed what was happening in time but still didn't get away completely. Almost died. As I'm telling everyone what I saw, I realize I just tried to kill Vittel myself. Oh, I'm such a little spurg. After that I man up and really force myself to learn how to let shit roll off my back. Count myself lucky to this day that I didn't kill that Vittel LMO. He still wound up addicted to painkillers after the accident though. C'est la vie.
I never knew my grandpa that much, but he grew up in East Germany, and he passed away recently. He told me a shitload of stories about life under the DDR, and most of them were steeped in spooks and happenings. Gonna post a few. I'll be back if the thread gets archived or anyone's interested in more. The grandpa, named Otto, 9 at the time of the story. Parents live in Dresden. Place is a shithole from Allied bombing in World War II. Moved to the countryside after inheriting grandparents' farm. Place is in a pretty pleasant and cozy section of hills and lowlands, dense with forestry. Playing near the woods. Accidentally kick ball into the forest, completely lose sight of it. Scared of the woods 'cause little kid. Go get Papa to help me get it. Dad seems nervous too. We both go back to the farmhouse. Dad leaves me there. He takes his old hunting rifle, technically illegal for him to own this time of year, but he didn't care. Sit inside playing with a train set. Hear a gunshot from the woods. Run outside to investigate. Dad is walking back with the ball under one arm, no rifle, looks shaken. Gramps wouldn't learn what his dad did in the woods until he was 19, so I'll share that part of the story. The Gramps, 19. Talking with Dad over a beer about childhood memories. Asks him about the time he lost his ball. Dad sighs, shrugs, which took it. Laugh. Dad is deadly serious. Feel my stomach churn. I didn't want to leave that rifle there, but it was cursed. Any tool that draws a witch's blood is. Suddenly don't want to drink anymore. The grandpa, 21. Working parents' farm. Toiling the fields, planting wheat. Stop to have a drink and cool off. Sitting on the porch with a clear view of the tree line. See the branches rustle. The hell. Stare intently as the treetops rustle like something was moving between them. Incredibly tall figure emerges, easily was eye level with the treetops, towered over me and even the farmhouse. Wearing animal pelts and carrying 2 dead bulls like they were potatoes. It notices me. Grunts, says something that sounds like absolute gibberish in this voice so deep and booming I could feel it in my bones. Walks back into the woods. Next day, Dad, who was in his 70s and still living with Gramps at this time, forces him to leave a dead cow at the tree line. It's completely gone by noon, never see anything take it. Last one for now. The grandpa, 13. Visiting a friend's house. Friend is a Polak, speaks German but in a Pole accent. Laugh at his voice a few times, start playing football with him in the backyard. Easily pass most of the day doing this, it's getting very late. Sun's beginning to set. Go inside and eat dinner with friend and his family before going to walk home. On the walk home, notice that there's a new dirt path through the woods that wasn't there before. Knew Dad was going to chew my ass out for being late, decide to explore it anyways. It's pretty short, but leads to a little grove that is absolutely surrounded in a dense wall of trees. There's a very shabby looking cabin in the middle, looks abandoned but the lights are still on. Distinctly smell a stew being cooked from the cabin. See the lights quickly turn off, and just barely make out this little old lady emerge from the cabin holding a huge stick and a lantern. She shouts at me.
Hello, dearie. Do you want to join me for dinner?
Shout back, no thanks, miss. She shouts back one last time before I walk off.
But you look so plump and delectable.
Run off back to home. Dad chews me out for being late. Don't bother telling him about the weird witch lady.
Oh, see, no explanation, but it's true in as much as all of this is accurate as I remember it. Be child at aunt's house, would visit all the time, sometimes multiple times a week. My older cousins are there, they tell me about the library. To transport to it you have to squeeze behind the TV cabinet, massive hardwood furniture with tons of storage, and between it and the wall and go all the way up, the way the molding stuck out from the door, you could go in one side but not out the other. Don't even remember the first time it happened, but we'd do it all the time, occasionally 2 or 3 at once, usually alone. Have to become as thin as possible against the wall to squeeze through, face almost touching the back of the TV cabinet, can barely move once you reach it. Freeze in place and close your eyes and you'll go to the library. Apparently we just stand there for 20 minutes to an hour plus at times, silent, unmoving. Would never remember what happened in the library long after leaving but would always be eager to go back. Adults thought it was just us being weird but would get concerned when one of us would just jam ourselves between the furniture and the wall and freeze for an hour and a half at a time. I have no vivid memories of what happened in the library, but I can picture it, a massive wide open white space with countless books and circular reading pod sections. We discuss our adventures in the library together but somehow forget them all each time until we'd go back to the library. They fade fast like dreams. Would neglect toys, games, TV, everything else to randomly go visit the library. Still have no explanation.
This story's a couple years old and I don't tell it a lot, so I might be remembering some parts of this wrong, but feck it. Be 16-year-old, Arab American. Mom's an Iraqi, dad's half Iraqi. Parents are pretty staunch about their beliefs, I'm not. We live in San Fran, decent apartment that my dad manages to afford thanks to working PR for some big company. I just got home from playing some Halo 2 at a lawn party with a few friends from school. It's pretty late, probably 9 p.m. Mom is the only one home, dad's still at work. The floor our apartment is on has a lot of rumors swirling about it, ghosts, murders, etc. The landlord did disclose to us that a lot of people leave the room on that floor really quickly because, as they tell her, something doesn't sit right with them about the floor. It's very unevenly lit in the hallway. There's usually 3 lights in the hall on each floor, but there's only one in this hall in the center. My family's apartment is on the far end of the hall. As I'm walking further into the shadows, approaching my room, I start getting goosebumps. Very clearly feel something with coarse hair brush up against my neck. Spaz out. Flail around and sprint full force to my apartment. Mom is immediately worried. I try to explain to her I felt something touch the back of my neck. She immediately looks more annoyed than anything. Grabs her little Quran pocketbook. Walks out into the halls, holding up the book. Starts shouting in Arabic. I don't speak Arabic fluently, I understand just enough to pray with my parents and understand them when they yell at me in Arabic. What I pick up is something like, Allah shield me from the lies of devils. Immediately the lights in the hall flicker. 2 more lights come on in the hall. The landlord always told us that those lights were broken and didn't work no matter how many times she replaced them. They still work to this day. TFW, my mom banished a devil or ghost.
Okay, just copying from other thread. My grandpa told this a while back. He lives in rural Quebec, outside of Saguenay. Not exactly the middle of nowhere, but definitely not in town. Be my grandpa. Lets dogs outside by themselves to do their business and play. They're Great Pyrenees, which can get to be huge, and they're well trained so they can handle themselves. After a little bit he hears one of them growling at something. He goes outside to see what's up, and his dogs are staring directly at the tree line and growling. He scans the tree line once and sees nothing, but on the second pass he sees something in the treetops shift. Not at the ground. The treetops. Immediately notices this thing hanging onto one of the trees, sort of half camouflaged with brown-gray skin or fur or something. He said he thought it might have been feathers. Compared it to a giant owl person, mostly because it had enormous eyes. He goes WTF and the dogs start freaking out and barking at it. He watches this thing shimmy maybe halfway down the trees, then turn and leap to the next tree like a cricket does, and it just keeps jumping away into the forest. Grandpa grabs the dogs and runs back inside. Stays up late watching the trees behind the house with his gun. Fast forward to September this year. Be me, staying at Grandpa's place because my brothers don't really stay in touch with him and I thought he'd like the company. Sun has just set. Grandpa's an old man now, so he calls it a night early. Only one of the dogs is alive and it usually sleeps in his room. The guest bedroom that I'm in faces the trees. I have it open because I like autumn air. Suddenly hear the trees shaking. Think it's just the wind. Realize it's one by one. Realize it's rhythmic. Look out and realize one tree shakes and then another. Remember his story about Grasshopper-Owl-Man. My face went.
I was quite a psychonaut when I was younger. I dabbled primarily with mescaline and acid, had a bad trip on psilocybin and never touched it again, and then one day a psychonaut friend of mine introduced me to a lovely lady named ayahuasca, and later, actual DMT. My first ayahuasca trip was pretty uneventful, really. I just laid on the couch watching some bright, colorful TV show I can't remember, and ended up drifting off to sleep. My second trip, now on DMT, may have messed me up for years to come. I was aware of a lot of the reported effects of DMT. I was super interested in the ideas of machine elves and the Jesters. It's actually what motivated me to try it out. I got 2 other friends, both straight-edged aside from cigarettes, to trip set for me and my psychonaut buddy as we tripped. As the DMT finally kicked in, I felt my body completely relax. I got nice and cozy on my friend's leather couch, and just enjoyed the doom metal that filled the room. The first effect was that the textures on the walls and floors started to get strange. They'd spiral, break into patterns, almost like mosaics. It was a beautiful sight. This was how the trip stayed for quite a while, and I was blitzed but enjoying it. And then I encountered my first DMT Jester. It was like I was looking through one of those telescope tubes, the ones with the colorful images inside. I can't remember the name, but it took the silhouette of a Jester. I tried to speak, and he just laughed at me, and I watched him prance into the wall and disappear. I was a little underwhelmed, even in my drugged state, and then I immediately just felt the trip start to change. I felt something start to well in my chest, like when you're stuck waiting for your boss in a meeting about how bad you screwed up. I closed my eyes, and opened them again. I still only saw blackness, and I blinked a few times. I turned my head, and I realized there was some kind of illusion occurring in the trip. This blackness tugged at the edges of my vision, distorting the light, and if I looked directly at it, it would engulf all I could see. I was starting to get scared, and the fear intensified as I saw the blackness shrink and morph into a shape. It was the same silhouette as the Jester, but something about it struck such a great fear in me. I was mortified and I tried to get up, to run, or something. I felt the black Jester grab me, his hands felt cold and slimy, and immediately my entire sense of smell was assaulted by this sickeningly sweet, yet pungent and bitter, smell like lavender and garlic. My head started to fill with images of suicide, how easily I could take my own life, and how no one loved me. It showed me images of my friends and family at my funeral, looking bored, annoyed. I was engulfed in an existential crisis. It felt like reality was crumbling around me, and the roof was about to cave in on me any second now. And then the trip stopped. Like a light switch had been flicked. All I could smell was the cheap leather of the carpet, and everything was normal. Except I was the only one left in the apartment. I was terrified, honestly. I thought it was another extension of the DMT trip. I called out for my friends, and went to the door. I kept shouting, and this old woman poked her head out of the apartment across from my friends. She asked me if I was okay, and said I looked like I had just been in a fight. I told her I was okay, and asked if she saw my friends. She shook her head no, and told me she had just been returning from home a few minutes ago. If they had left recently she would have seen them. I staggered back into my friend's apartment, and headed for the bathroom. Something sunk in my stomach as I went to flick the lights and wash up my face, some primal sense telling me I didn't want to know what I'd see if I turned on the lights. I forced myself to, shrugging off the hunch, and for a brief moment, for just a second, I thought it was just an irrational hunch. And then I looked in the mirror. My right eye was horrifically bruised, and my face bloated and swollen. It looked like there were tears and snot streaming down my face, but my face felt completely dry. Even as I touched my cheeks and the bags under my eyes, it felt perfectly dry. Still, I washed up, and decided I'd just head home, guessing my friends must have thought I went to sleep. When I got home, I called one of them. No response. I called another. No response. I called the parents of one of them, and you guessed it, no response. I needed to unwind after such an insane trip, so I was choking the chicken in my bedroom to relax. Right as I was about to finish, a smell wafted into the room. Garlic and lavender. I felt an intense fear grip me, beyond human, probably even beyond primordial. Was this entire thing still a part of the trip? I rushed to my feet, grabbing the little baseball bat my dad gave me years ago, and walked out into the hallway. I carefully stepped into my living room, and I felt my heart drop when I saw what was laid on my couch. The clothes of all of the friends who had been with me during my trip. And their phones. All smelling very distinctly, and strongly, of garlic and lavender.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.